My name is Grace Walker. I'm 30 years old, born and raised in Fort Worth, Texas. I teach second grade. I drink too much iced coffee. And until the day I died, I never, ever took off my cross necklace. I got it when I was 15. It was a birthday gift from my grandma. Sterling silver with a tiny, deep red ruby at the center. She pressed it into my hand, her own wrinkled hand warm and soft around mine, and said, "This will protect you, baby. Never take it off." And I didn't, not for showers, not for sleep, not even for the 2 minor surgeries I had in my 20s. I wore it through every breakup, every late-night panic attack, every nerve-wracking job interview. It rested in the hollow of my throat, a constant, cool weight against my skin. It was my shield, my tangible proof that I belonged to God. The thing is, I didn't always live like I did. I want to be honest about that. I didn't go to church every Sunday. If I was tired or had papers to grade, I'd tell myself God understood. I didn't open my Bible the way I should have. It mostly collected dust on my nightstand. But I believed in Jesus. In my heart, I truly did. And I figured as long as that sterling silver necklace stayed on my chest, I was covered. It was like a spiritual insurance policy hanging around my neck. It made me feel safe, and if I'm being brutally honest, it made me feel a little superior. I would judge people who didn't wear one or who wore other symbols. I thought they were reckless. In my quiet, unexamined pride, I thought I was safer, more protected because I had the cross, until the accident. It was just another Tuesday. I was driving home after a long day at school, my mind a chaotic swirl of second-grade spelling tests and figuring out what to cook for dinner. The light at the intersection of Main and Elm turned green, and I pulled forward, my thoughts already on the evening ahead. I never saw the truck coming. The driver ran a red light, moving at a speed that was impossible to react to. All I remember is the sound. A horrifying, violent symphony of metal on metal, the explosive shatter of glass, and screams that I couldn't place, one of which must have been my own. And then a profound and sudden silence. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't in the car anymore. I was floating, weightless, above the chaotic scene. I saw the twisted metal of my small sedan, the massive grille of the truck buried in its side. I watched as paramedics worked with practiced urgency, using the jaws of life to pull my broken body from the wreckage. And I saw my cross necklace, still around my neck, the little ruby glinting in the flashing emergency lights. The symbol was there, but I was gone. And in that moment, hovering in the strange, silent space between two worlds, one single thought hit me with a force greater than the truck ever could. That necklace couldn't save me. And if I was about to meet Jesus, I wasn't sure if I had been living for him, or just wearing his symbol like a badge I had never truly earned. I didn't fall through a tunnel of light, I didn't float through clouds. I was just there. 1 second, I was watching the EMTs trying to bring my body back to life, and the next, I was standing in a place that didn't make sense to my human mind. It wasn't Earth, but it wasn't some fantasy of clouds and harps either. The air itself shimmered, as if it were alive and breathing. Colors I had no names for moved through the space around me like currents of music. There was a warm, liquid gold, a deep, contemplative violet, and a shade of blue so pure and vibrant it didn't exist in the world I had just come from. But what struck me most was the silence. It wasn't an empty, dead silence. It was a full, sacred silence, the kind you feel when someone holy and powerful has just entered the room and all of creation holds its breath. And then I saw him. I don't even know how I knew it was Jesus. He didn't look like the paintings in my grandma's Bible. His skin was darker, a warm olive tone, like a man who had spent his life under a Middle Eastern sun. His robe was plain, the color of desert sand. There was no glowing halo. But when he looked at me, really looked at me, there was a weight in his eyes. It wasn't judgment, it wasn't anger, it was just knowing. He knew everything. Every thought I'd ever had, every sin I'd ever committed, every lie I'd ever told myself to feel better. And yet, in the face of that perfect knowledge, I didn't feel condemned. For the first time in my life, I felt completely and utterly seen. Grace, he said. The way he said my name, it was like he was saying it for the first time and yet had said it 1,000 times before, like the name belonged to me in a way I had forgotten. My hand immediately, instinctively, reached for the cross around my neck. It was still there, glowing with a faint, silvery light. I clutched it like it was a shield, my only defense. I wore it every day, I said quickly, my voice a trembling whisper. I never took it off, not once. Jesus stepped closer, his presence radiating a gentle warmth. I know. Tears I couldn't physically shed welled up in my soul. So, it means I'm yours, right? I belong to you. He looked at me, his eyes full of a love that was almost painful in its purity, and his answer wasn't cruel, just devastatingly honest. It means what your heart made it mean. I froze, my fingers tightening around the silver pendant. It wasn't magic, I whispered. It didn't protect me. It didn't need to, he said, his voice kind. I was always there, protecting you, even when you forgot me. I started to shake, but I believed in you, I had faith. You had symbols, he replied, his gaze unwavering. Now I want to show you what you truly carried. Before I could ask what he meant, he reached out his hand not toward me but toward the necklace. The silver cross began to glow brighter and brighter, a pulsating light that grew in intensity until it lifted off my chest and hovered in the space between us, like a star caught in midair. And then it began to spin. As it spun, the light it cast shifted and bent, and suddenly it wasn't just a necklace anymore, it was a doorway. Jesus looked into my eyes, his expression calm but serious. Come with me, there is something you need to see. The cross spun faster, the world around us shimmered, and before I could take a breath, I was being pulled into something much deeper, something I never could have imagined. Not all crosses shine the same in heaven. I stepped through the spinning light where my necklace had hovered, and suddenly everything changed. It was like walking into the very heart of eternity. The space around me was vast, endless. I couldn't see walls or a ceiling, but the air itself shimmered like glass soaked in sunlight. There was no floor, yet I was standing. No wind, but something moved like invisible waves of presence. And in the center of it all were crosses. Thousands, maybe millions of them, floating, turning, suspended in midair like stars in a galaxy made entirely of faith and failure. Each one was different. Some were pure gold, glowing with a warm, steady light that made my chest ache with its beauty. Some were made of rough, splintered wood, simple but radiating an immense power. Others were covered in heavy chains, or wrapped in sharp thorns, or cracked down the middle like broken promises. And some were dark, not black, but a kind of cold, light-absorbing void that made the space around them dim. I couldn't breathe, not from fear, but from overwhelming awe. What is this place? I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. Jesus stood beside me, his eyes fixed on the floating crosses. These are the crosses people wear, he said, not the ones around their necks, the ones they carry or refuse to carry in their hearts. I took a hesitant step forward. A beautiful golden cross drifted near me. Inside its light, I could see a vision. A woman kneeling by a hospital bed holding a simple rosary, whispering prayers for her husband through her sobs. She never took off her cross, Jesus said, but more importantly, she never forgot what it meant, she lived it. Another cross floated by. It was silver, simple, elegant. But as I looked closer, I saw that the inside of it was completely hollow. Within that hollow space, I saw a man standing on a stage, preaching with fire and charisma. That man used my name, Jesus said, his voice heavy with sorrow. But he did not know my ways. He loved the attention the cross brought him, but not the sacrifice it required. I saw more, a diamond-studded cross, dripping with luxury, surrounded by swirling visions of money and fame. Another shaped like a dagger, carried by someone who used my name to wound others with judgment. I saw one carved with Bible verses, but the verses had twisted into chains that bound the person wearing it in legalism and fear. Then I saw something that made my stomach drop, my cross. It drifted toward me slowly, glowing faintly. It wasn't bright like the golden ones, nor was it dark and cold. It was just conflicted. Inside, I saw my life played out. Every time I clutched it for good luck before a test. Every time I wore it on a date with someone I knew I shouldn't have been with. Every time I touched it in traffic and said a quick, "Lord, keep me safe," even when I hadn't spoken to him in weeks. There was even that one time, my lowest point, when I screamed at God, crying on my bathroom floor, and held it so tight the edges left a red mark in my palm. I looked at Jesus, ashamed. I thought wearing it made me right with you. He nodded slowly. You thought it was the proof. Wasn't it? I asked, my voice cracking. No, he said gently. It was the reminder, the symbol, not the seal. I felt something burn behind my eyes. All those years, I whispered. I judged people who didn't wear one. I thought they were weaker. I thought I was better. Jesus turned to face me, his eyes full of compassion. Many have confused the cross as an accessory with the cross as a calling. I looked around at the other crosses. Some were burning with a passionate fire, others smoldered like forgotten embers. A few were wrapped in barbed wire, oozing with a pain that was almost tangible. What about those? I asked, pointing to the darker ones. Jesus answered softly, those are the crosses carried by the proud, by the bitter, by those who invoke my name to shame others, to gain power, or to hide their own sin. Then he showed me a cross I will never forget. It was beautiful, made of handcrafted wood, polished and smooth with golden edges and intricate detail. It looked perfect, but it was hanging upside down. Jesus didn't speak for a long time. Finally, he said, that one is carried by those who loved the idea of me but rejected the cost. And suddenly, it hit me like a wave. The cross I wore wasn't a lie, but it also wasn't a life. It was a starting point that I never moved beyond. I thought back to my teenage self, putting it on in the mirror like a piece of spiritual armor. I remembered the comfort it gave me, but also how it allowed me to feel safe while keeping a comfortable distance from true obedience, from surrender, from a real, messy, intimate relationship with God. I thought about how many Sundays I skipped but told myself, it's fine, I've got my cross, I'm still his. I thought about how I never defended Jesus in conversation, but still wore him on my chest as a silent advertisement. Jesus turned to me again. Your necklace was never the problem, Grace. It's what you used it to avoid. I fell to my knees in that holy place. I'm so sorry, I whispered, the words torn from the depths of my soul. I wanted to believe, I thought it was enough. He knelt beside me, placing his hand on my shoulder. You were always loved, even when you misunderstood me, but now you know the truth. Tears streamed down my face. Can I carry the cross now? I asked, the real one. His eyes sparkled with a divine light. You already are, you said yes when you let me show you this. The gallery began to fade, the thousands of crosses dissolving into a golden mist. But something in me had shifted forever. I had worn the symbol. Now I understood the weight. I thought maybe it was over, but then the mist parted and I was standing in a church. Not just any church, my church. The sanctuary looked exactly as I remembered it. The wooden pews, the worn pulpit, and that old baptismal painting of Jesus with sheep, the one that was always slightly crooked. This wasn't just a memory. The pews were filled with people from different moments in my life, and there I was, a younger me, 17, wearing that same silver cross trying to look holy. But inside, I was already slipping away. Jesus stood beside me. Watch, he said. The pastor preached a passionate sermon about how wearing the cross shows the world who you belong to. The congregation nodded, and I watched as teenage me touched the necklace and smiled. Not because I felt closer to Jesus, but because I looked like I did. She thought she was covered, Jesus said gently, because she wore the symbol. The scene shifted. I was in my 20s, hungover, sitting in the back pew with sunglasses on. No one asked questions, no one prayed with me. But I was still wearing it, I whispered. And that made them feel safe, Jesus said. Symbols comfort people more than truth does. They saw the cross on you and assumed the inside matched the outside. They never asked, they just assumed. Then the image fractured like shattering glass. I saw the hidden realities beneath the surface of my good church. I saw youth leaders warning girls not to dress too worldly while secretly struggling with porn addictions. I saw our head deacon, a man who prayed so eloquently on Sundays. And then I saw a memory of him ruthlessly firing an employee on Monday without a shred of compassion. I saw myself brushing past a homeless man outside the church while adjusting my cross necklace, telling myself I was running late for worship. Jesus looked at me, his face filled with a deep grief. "Do you see it now?" he asked. "Yes," I said, my voice shaking. "We wore you like a decoration, like insurance." "You wore me," he said, his voice firm but gentle, "but you did not follow me." I broke, collapsing onto the ground of that phantom church, weeping into my hands. But I wanted to believe Jesus. I thought I did. He knelt beside me. "You believed in me, but you did not believe me." I froze, the words cutting through me. "There is a difference," he said. "Believing in me says I exist. Believing me means trusting what I said enough to live it." "Then why didn't you stop me?" I cried. "Why didn't you show me sooner?" "I tried," he said, his voice full of patience. "Through people, through moments of conviction, through silence. But you were busy holding onto the symbol, hoping it would do the work of the sacrifice." I winced. "You weren't the only one," he added. The image zoomed out, showing churches across America. Thousands of people with crosses on their necks, their shirts, their cars, crosses everywhere. "They worship the symbol," Jesus said sadly, "but they ignore the cross." "And what about those who don't wear one?" I asked suddenly. "People who love you but don't wear any symbol at all." He smiled. "They carry it every day, sometimes invisibly, sometimes painfully, but they carry it." Then I saw one last image, a man with no cross on his clothes, sitting by a hospital bed, patiently feeding his dying mother soup, tears in his eyes. And above him, a glowing golden cross floated, unseen by the world. "He walks with me," Jesus said, "even though no one sees the sign." It was the most humbling thing I had ever witnessed. And it made me want to start over. "Is it too late?" I whispered. Jesus reached out, placed his hand over my heart. "Not at all," he said. The scene faded, light returned, and I felt something shifting inside me, like something heavy had been removed and something holy had taken its place. The next thing I remember was pain. Bright hospital lights, tubes, machines beeping. Someone was calling my name as if from underwater. "Grace, Grace, can you hear me?" I blinked slowly. My mother was gripping my hand, her mascara melted into her cheeks. "You flatlined for 9 minutes," a nurse said, her voice trembling, "but somehow you came back." I wanted to speak, but I couldn't, not yet. My body was weak, but my spirit was wide awake. When they finally removed the oxygen tube, the first thing I asked was, "Where's my necklace?" The nurse paused. It broke in the crash. The EMTs found it in 2 pieces on the road. I'm so sorry." I nodded quietly, not sad, not angry, just still. Because now I understood something I never had before. That cross wasn't supposed to save me. It was supposed to point me to the one who could. For too long, I wore it like armor, thinking it made me righteous, holy, and safe, all while ignoring the God it was meant to remind me of. Now I carry something else, not around my neck, but inside my chest, a conviction, a burning, a decision. I don't just want to wear the cross anymore. I want to walk like the one who carried it. And it's not easy. I still fight the urge to judge. I still catch myself reaching for symbols when I should be reaching for scripture. I still want to appear spiritual instead of actually surrendering, but now I know what I'm aiming for. I don't need a silver chain to prove I'm His. The proof is in how I live, how I forgive, how I speak, how I serve, how I sacrifice. I came back with a message, not just for all Christians, but for the comfortable Christians. The ones like me, the ones who thought believing in Jesus was enough, but never believed Him enough to follow. If that's you, I say this in love. You can wear the cross and still be lost. But when the cross lives inside you, when you truly surrender, you will never be alone again. So yes, I still have the necklace, the 2 broken pieces. I keep it in a drawer not as a shield but as a reminder. But these days I don't wear it because now I carry it.